No,
we need to do like an hour with BPA.
No, we don't. No, we don't. 2 minutes is good enough. Mike Florio's on the line here. Mike Florio. What date was this, Spinotti? March 11th. March 11th. Listen to Mike Florio back on this show March 11th before we bring him onto the airwaves.
Something to put on the radar screen. I don't know that this is going to happen, but at some point, I think it's fair for Christian McCaffrey to say, "Hey, I think it's time to look at my contract here, because how many great years does he have left? This may be the time for him to rattle the cage a little bit and try to get more money."
Wow. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, one of our best friends on this show. And you were all over it, and you were right, and you broke the news yesterday. Christian McCaffrey gets his new money, 2-year, $38 million extension, creates $7.6 million in cap space for the 49ers, and they get the deal done. It's not usually the way John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan operates, Mike, where they usually give extensions in July, late July, early August in training camp, but they get the deal done with McCaffrey in June at minicamp. Are you surprised it got done this early?
No, I'm not surprised. Look, going into the last season, I thought there was a chance during the season as Christian McCaffrey was putting together the kind of numbers that ultimately secured the 2023 AP Offensive Player of the Year award, that there would be an effort to get that contract adjusted. When they traded for him in October of 2022, they inherited a contract that for the 49ers was $12 million a year for 3 years, which is, as the running back market goes, a hell of a bargain. So I think the 49ers benefited by McCaffrey's patience, and I think they realized his patience potentially was going to run out at some point. They needed to get this taken care of. They need to not have him within a year or two of potentially becoming a free agent, especially with Adam Peters and Christian McCaffrey's brother playing in Washington. And there's certainly other teams out there that would have been interested if he would have become available as a free agent. So I think it made a ton of sense to get this taken care of. You push the running back market up to $19 million. I mean, there is something seriously wrong with this picture when you consider what a weapon Christian McCaffrey is. And you've got so many receivers now north of $25 million a year. Christian McCaffrey is more valuable than several of, I'm not going to name names, but do I really have to? Several of the guys who are making $25 million or more per year. I'd rather have Christian McCaffrey than them. The only issue is, at what point is the tread off the tires? At what point do we see a decline? How long can he play at the level he's been playing at?
Well, there may be a receiver on his own team where he's more valuable, and that's Deebo Samuel, Jason's number one. I said it, not you, Mike, but real quick, do you think there was any chance, if this deal didn't get done for Christian McCaffrey, that he holds out in training camp?
I don't know. Look, he was staying away from OTAs, and I poked around to see if it was contract related, and I was told it wasn't. He's got a wedding coming up. Well, the wedding's not until the end of June, so he could have been at OTAs. And I think everybody was trying to be positive about it and not create a mess. And it worked. They got it done. They got it done right at the mandatory minicamp. He didn't have to hold out from that, didn't create a mess, didn't create a problem. And the team did the right thing. He has $24 million in guarantees that weren't otherwise there. And he's got that $19 million per year new money average on the 2 years that we're at the end. It's, one of the great misconceptions, because we hear about extensions all the time. There is no such thing as an extension. I can talk about this till I'm blue in the face. They rip up the old contract and they replace it with a new one. And that's what they did. He gets a signing bonus. He gets $24 million fully guaranteed at signing. The deal's worth like $15.1, $15.2 million at signing on a 4-year deal. That's what it is. It's still a great deal, but the agents like to focus on new money average because it's a bigger number and it lets them say to prospective clients, look at what I got for this guy. But the real deal is a win-win. And they've got him for 4 more years. We'll see what happens after he turns 30, June 7 of 2026. But for now, he's still playing at a high level. And if they want to finish this job and win a Super Bowl, they need him to be not thinking about his future, but focused on the present.
Mike, I'm looking at Carolina after trading so many different picks, and basically they got part of the package from CMC they used to go get Bryce, and that hasn't worked out. And then they got a linebacker. I mean, is this not one of the greatest in-season trades of all time for the 49ers? Outside of like Fred Dean, when they won
the Niners in the league.
Well, I guess that's where I'm asking. Like
the NFL.
To me, this is the template in any sport. Like, give me the player over the picks all day.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I always say get a proven player over the roll of the dice on a draft pick because there's no guarantee the guy's going to work out. You look at how the Panthers have been mismanaged under David Tepper by trading away Christian McCaffrey in his prime, by giving up all that stuff they did to go from 9-1 to get the wrong quarterback. All due respect, Bryce Young could still turn out to be a franchise quarterback, but based on first year, they clearly whiffed on that. And as part of that package, they surrendered to the Bears the pick that became Caleb Williams, who could become a franchise quarterback. So as bad moves go, the Panthers have made plenty of them. And the McCaffrey trade, I mean, although the 49ers didn't win the Super Bowl, it kind of worked out for the 49ers the way that Herschel Walker trade was supposed to work out for the Vikings. That was the missing piece. That was the thing they needed. That was the kick in the ass. And the irony is the Shanahan offense is premised on using a bunch of different running backs and not one bell cow guy. You get Christian McCaffrey, though, you pivot to the bell cow mindset and you get the most out of him you can. And, you know, he's around for another run at it. They've been so tantalizingly close to a Super Bowl, 4 NFC championship appearances and 2 Super Bowl appearances. And, you know, it looked like last year it was going to finally happen. But if you want to get through, if you want to kick that door in, you need to have Christian McCaffrey.
There's no doubt about that. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk here on the Morning Rush on 95.7 The Game. Don't forget about his book, Father of Mine, available on Amazon right now. Really good book, Mike. I'm halfway through it. Before we get to Brandon Aiyuk, I just saw a report, Adam Schefter's podcast, where they said, hey, Minnesota didn't want to trade Justin Jefferson, but the Niners definitely called the Minnesota Vikings about Justin Jefferson and looking for a trade. Were the Minnesota Vikings looking to trade Jefferson? Was there any smoke there on a potential trade of JJ, who's got the big money deal at the wide receiver position?
I think the Vikings played this very coyly. They didn't get serious about trying to sign Justin Jefferson until after the draft. And I think before the draft, they just were kind of sitting back and seeing, is somebody going to make a Herschel Walker type of an offer? And too many people have heard about this possibility of moving up to 5 to get Malik Neighbors, the LSU receiver that the Giants took at 6, to just dismiss it as something somebody's pulling out of their butt. There's too many people that heard about it. I heard about it from somebody in the Chargers draft room as it was all going down. And the Chargers said no. Jim Harbaugh wanted to stick with Joe Alt, the Notre Dame tackle at number 5. They rejected the offer from the Vikings to trade up, and the belief was they wanted Neighbors, not a quarterback. So I don't know what they would have done if they had pulled it off. But, yes, I think it was a possibility. You have to consider the economics of the position. Neighbors has already signed a 4-year contract worth $29 million total as the 6th overall pick in the draft. The Vikings are paying Justin Jefferson $35 million per year on his new deal. So there's a financial reason to say, and this is the original analytics in football, dollar for dollar, what am I getting for this player? Can I get more dollar for dollar for someone else? Can I get somebody who's almost as good for a lot cheaper? Do I have him a lot longer? So I think it would have taken a lot to pry him away. And the Vikings also would have had to be in position where they emerged from that transaction with a replacement for Justin Jefferson. We're so focused on their replacement for Kirk Cousins. How do you make that offense go if you have Jordan Addison, Brandon Powell, and no one else?
That's a great point. Where does this leave Brandon Aiyuk with everything going on with the wide receiver market, with the 49ers giving CMC the money quietly behind the scenes? He's been very, I would say, social media outspoken because he hasn't said anything, in front of a microphone per se. Where does this leave Brandon Aiyuk?
Well, this receiver market is strange because it's kind of a hybrid of quarterback and running back. At the running back position, for the most part, teams are willing to say, we're just not going to pay you big money. We'll go find somebody else. At the quarterback position, the inclination is we better keep the guy we have, even if he's not a guy that's going to take us over the hump. For receivers, there's a handful of guys that are going to command that huge contract. And at some point, there's going to be a dividing line between we're going to pay you what you want versus we'll just find somebody else. And, is Ricky Pearsall to somebody else they've already found? And are they just going to reload that way? One of the points Chris Sims made when we started talking about Aiyuk before the draft, you look at highlights, it's a lot of Brandon Aiyuk wide open. And that's the offense. And that's having Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams. And is it the innate skill of Aiyuk, or is it just this guy is right place, right time. And yes, he's got the basic skill level. I don't want to demean his abilities, but how much of it is, hey, we could find somebody else a lot cheaper and plug him into that spot, and he'll become a second-team All-Pro like Brandon Aiyuk. So I think that's what they're dealing with. And, you could look at the McCaffrey deal in one of two ways. Hey, by paying McCaffrey, they're sending the message they're not going to dig deep for Aiyuk, or before we give Aiyuk something north of $20 million, we better take care of Christian because it's going to be damn glaring if Aiyuk's at 24 and Christian's at 12.
Think Aiyuk's pissed off right now? You think he's ticked off a little bit? He had an Instagram post a couple of weeks ago, Mike, where he said, hey, I don't like to share my food. And next thing you know, he says, I'm hungry. I don't like to share my food. And basically, Juwan Jennings gets the deal. We see Christian McCaffrey gets the deal yesterday. How's this going to end up for Brandon? This seems nasty. This one seems nastier than the Debo situation, Mike.
Well, and you're right. And remember how bad it was with Debo at one point. It was a given he wanted out. And those were the reports. And there was the video of him in the club, and there was a sign about keeping Debo Samuel, and they cut to him, and he's doing the no, I don't want to be, it was,
right.
And then it worked. He got the contract. This is the dilemma that players face all the time. And Sims and I argued about this last week. It was a pretty robust discussion. On one hand, you want to have a team that's successful, and there's only so many dollars to go around, and you want to try to win championships, and you don't want to be selfish. On the other hand, you want to be selfish. You've only got so many years to play at a high level. You only have so many opportunities to go get paid big money. For Aiyuk, this might be it. So do you compromise that on the roll of the dice that you're going to win a Super Bowl? You see how hard it is? Good Lord. There's no guarantee that just keeping the band together is going to result in anything different than what it's been the last 5 years. At some point, you have to have the Peyton Manning approach, which is, it's my job to get paid. It's your job to manage the salary cap. And yes, he only won 2 Super Bowls with that approach, but he walked away with a hell of a lot more money than he otherwise would have. And you can go the Tom Brady approach and consistently take less and win more championships, but there's still no guarantee you're going to win those championships. So that's the balance. But Aiyuk, when you consider what the market is, I don't see why he should compromise. But the problem is, if the 49ers aren't going to pay him, who is? And that's the problem. You've got to get somebody who's willing to give the 49ers what they would want by trade and pay him what he wants. It's more to expect from a stranger team than it is from the 49ers because all they'd have to do is pay him. So, I think they tried before the draft. It didn't get anywhere. I think permission was given for him to go out and shop for a trade. It didn't get to where it needed to be. I don't know what's changed now. So I agree with you. There's a chance this gets ugly, and he could hold out a training camp and try to force this thing all the way down to week 1 and see if anybody eventually bites.
Who would pay him quickly in the NFL? Because I have a Purdy question I want to get to.
Well, I know I'm close to Pittsburgh, and I know that there are Steelers fans that would love to get him. But, I mean, again, $25-30 million a year and the Steelers have shown that they can draft and develop great young receivers. They have a history going back to Mike Wallace, for crying out loud. And Antonio Brown, and the list goes on and on. So I just think it's a lot, and it's a shame. I think Brandon Aiyuk potentially is going to be the guy who finds out there are limits to how many of these receivers are going to get paid big money.
Hey, real quick, before Shasky gets to the Purdy question, do you believe Brandon Aiyuk's an elite receiver, I should say? Is he a top 10 elite wide receiver in this league?
I mean, he's second-team All-Pro, but, would he be the guy that keeps you up at night game planning? Is he the guy that you have to put 2 defenders on everywhere he goes? I don't think he's that guy. So, I think there's a lot of guys you could put at that spot in the 49ers offense who would put together 1,300-plus receiving yards and be a second-team All-Pro. And, again, I don't want to take anything away from Brandon Aiyuk, but I don't think it's elite, rare skills like Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, absolute top-of-the-market guys.
So you'd say he's kind of like a system wide receiver to a degree, which brings me to Brock Purdy, because Chris Sims, the guy that you do the podcast with, who we hold in high regard, who's friends with Kyle Shanahan, does his quarterback rankings. And he emphasized that to him, Brock Purdy is a system plus quarterback, which was very interesting. And I got what he was saying. But of course, Mike, you know how this works. Niner fans were triggered, and they were triggered because Purdy is 17th on his list. And ahead of Purdy are Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, and Kyler Murray. What did you think of where Chris put Brock Purdy?
Well, I mean, look, Chris basically strips all other factors away and just focuses on what the guy brings to the table. And the reality of the Shanahan offense is, there's a certain guy that can thrive in that system. System quarterback has become a pejorative. I don't think there's a problem with calling a guy a system quarterback. The system quarterback is the guy who runs the plays that are called as designed, like clockwork, makes the throws. I think it is difficult to be a great system quarterback because you have to basically be exactly what the coach expects you to be, and that's how you're successful in a Kyle Shanahan offense. So he's done that well. He's the guy that Shanahan has been looking for. He came there wanting to get Kirk Cousins. They didn't evaluate Patrick Mahomes in 2017, his first year, because he thought he was getting Cousins the next year. And on the way to Cousins, he got talked into Jimmy Garoppolo. Oops. So Purdy is the guy that runs that system, and it works. Now, paying Purdy is going to be a challenge because, when it's time to go to the bargaining table after this season and Purdy's eligible for a contract, what's he going to want? And the argument is the same argument that we've been making as it relates to Tua Tagovailoa in Miami. How many of the guys out there could you put into that system and have that guy be as good or better? How much of it is the coach, the supporting cast, and how much of it is innate to the quarterback? And to me, the best of the best quarterbacks are the guys who, when the play that's called goes sideways, when the system breaks down, can he make chicken salad on the fly? And there aren't many guys that can do that. Those are the ones that should be north of $50 million, like Patrick Mahomes isn't but should be, and Josh Allen isn't but should be.
Chris Sims was on it with the Green Bay game, and I came on these airways and said, boy, that looked like a lot like Jimmy Garoppolo, Mike, in that playoff game against the Green Bay Packers. Brock Purdy for the first 3 quarters did not look good. And to Shasky's point, Niner fans do not want to hear it. He is the golden child around here. So we're scared to even critique him on a throw that he may throw to the other team, like the Baltimore Ravens, in which he almost threw 7 picks.
That's what fans do of every team. They rally the troops, they circle the wagons, and screw anyone who dares to say anything other than this is the best team that's ever been assembled in the history of football, and it's going to win the next 10 Super Bowls.
That's a walk-off, Mike. Take care, man. The new book is really, really good. I'll let you know when I finish it. Father of Mine, available right now on Amazon. Pro Football Talk, NBC Sports. It's Mike Florio who broke the news yesterday as Christian McCaffrey gets some new money here. 2 years, $38 million, signed through 2027, $19 million per. He resets the running back market. Mike, take care as always. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, guys.
Anytime, Mike.